Anna here, the afterthought in a family of intellectuals. Both big university players, my parents had their life exactly plotted. I then arrived, unwelcome and unannounced. Mom would often lament, her voice laden with guilt. We found out too late. Other choices had already been lost by the time they knew. I born barely 11 months apart from my sister Sarah. Although we appeared to be twins, the parallels stopped there. She had the intelligence. I had the heart. Day one made it abundantly evident who the favored was. "Look, John, Sarah's reading is already excellent," Mom yelled one day when I was roughly 3. Sarah sat in the corner, nose buried in a book designed for twice her age. That really defines the tone of our early years. Sarah threw herself into books. I ate life. She committed difficult books to memory. I can remember what I ate for morning. Though I was conscientious and hard-working, it never seemed to be enough. One day Mom asked, Anna, clearly frustrated in her voice, "How many times do I have to explain this? Simple addition is what we are doing here." I watched the figures, trying to make sense of them, but they danced around the page, mocking me. Sarah passed through her tough math assignments in the next room simultaneously. But I compensated for my lack of academics in charisma, the class clown. The life of the celebration was me. To everyone save my parents, my laughing was contagious. I was cracking a joke I had heard in school one evening over supper. The chicken then said, and then the chicken said, "Anna?" Mom's cutting voice sliced across my narrative. "Enough. Low intelligence is shown by laughing for no purpose. Please help yourself to control." My cheeks turned red with guilt. Sarah grinned across the table, her book on quantum physics never taken out of sight. The division only became more pronounced as elementary school went on. Like they were going out of fashion, Sarah gathered academic honors. Me too. If I received a gold star for attendance, I considered myself lucky. The day the 5th grade school science fair took place will never fade. First place went to Sarah's on cellular mitosis. Mine is, let's say, then, that my baking soda volcano did not precisely explode as expected. The car loaded with compliments for Sarah's accomplishment as we headed home. Sitting in the rear covered in dried baking soda, I felt smaller by the minute. "Well," Dad remarked at last, peering back in the rearview mirror, "I suppose not everyone in the family can be scientifically inclined." Mom nodded, her lips in a narrow line. "Anna clearly lacks the talent for it. What opinions of our colleagues should we expect?" Slinking down in my seat, I yearned to vanish. That was the instant I understood I would never be able to uphold their esteemed reputation among scientists. I was the disappointment, the person unable to continue their legacy. The distance separating Sarah and me just grew as we grew older. Sarah was flown to academic decathlons, math contests, and scientific camps. Me, Mrs. Jenkins, our older babysitter, was left with me. Nonetheless, you know what? Mrs. Jenkins was a miracle worker. Mrs. Jenkins was imparting knowledge useful in the real world while my parents were preparing Sarah to be the next Einstein. "Come on, Anna," she would say, her wrinkled hands guiding my kneading of dough. "Let me demonstrate how to create a pie that will really knock their socks off." Other days we would plan food lists and clip coupons. Her eyes sparkling, "Listen here, girl," she would say, "knowledge of how to stretch $1 is just as vital as knowledge of atom splitting." Still, the best lessons came from our heart-to-heart chats. One day as we watched the sunset on the porch, "Anna, dear," she remarked, "not everyone's born a genius, but everyone can make the world a bit better." You recalled that. In a house where I never appeared to measure up, those words became my lifeline. Sarah kept shining in front of her school. She competed in every academic contest, returning medals and prizes Mom would proudly show in the living room. Conversely, my report cards were buried in a drawer and never seen at all. In high school, it was difficult. I was just trying to keep my head above water while Sarah zipped through AP courses and SAT preparation. My enemy was arithmetic. No matter how hard I tried, the numbers would not cooperate. The last straw came that day we received our SAT results. Of course, Sarah had done it perfectly. Me too. Let's suppose my score wouldn't be getting me into any universities. Dad roared, waving my score report in front of me. A dumbass, that's what you are. How can you be that dumb? Simple addition, for God's sake. Mom watched from behind, disgustedly shaking her head. Sarah also. She grinned smugly as she leaned against the doorframe. She did not once come in to defend me. She never volunteered to assist once. She simply watched, most likely considering her great fortune to be the intelligent one. Tears running down my cheeks, I stood there while my parents launched their attack. You cannot even add 2 plus 2. How are you planning to enter college? To create something of your own? Their comments hurt right to the core, each one a reminder of how I will never be good enough. But in among their yelling, I saw something else stirring. Wrath, will, a strong will to disprove them. Their nasty remarks still echoing in my ears as I laid in bed that evening, I decided something. Though right now I might not be suited for college, that did not mean I could create something of myself. I marched into Sonny's supermarket the day following graduation and landed a job as a cashier. Though not flashy, you know what? I had something entirely my own for the first time in my life. I started drawing in my own wages within weeks. Though I told my parents I had a job, they hardly looked up from their newspaper. To be honest, I was relieved, not asked where or what I was doing. At least this way they couldn't object. Now I had my own money, but I still lived at home. Not much, but enough to enjoy some fun free from begging my folks for money. Knowing I could say yes without thinking about the expense, my friend and store colleague Lisa would phone, "Anna, you coming to the beach this weekend?" And I would smile. Sarah was immersed in books, getting ready for her first semester at some elite Ivy League university, while I was living it. Weekends at the beach, movie evenings with friends, last-minute road trips. I could now be me at last, unfettered. Weeks become months, and I adjusted to my new life. I was glad, even if the life my parents had hoped for me was not what I found. Truly delighted. That day followed, the day that fundamentally changed things. Tuesday afternoon it was. The store was empty until I heard the automated door swoosh open while replenishing the gum display. Looking up, my usual greeting on my lips froze. Looking as prim and perfect as always, my mother was there. We simply looked at one another for a moment. She looked shocked, and I followed right away with humiliation. She turned, obviously ready to go without saying, but some foolish, hopeful part of me cried out, "Mom, hey." Her visage a mask of contempt, she turned slowly. "Anna," she replied, her voice full with letdown. "What are you doing here?" Trying to preserve a light voice, I gestured to my name badge. "My workplace is here, have been for some months now." Her eyes squeezed. "A woman in sales? Really, Anna? The daughter of a lecturer, reduced to this?" She waved a lazy hand at the nearby grocery. "What would our colleagues believe should they learn my daughter ranks lowest on the social ladder?" Her comments landed like a smack. I had felt pleased of my independence, of making my own way, but in her view I was simply embarrassing. "I'm working, honestly," I said, sounding little. "I am not doing anything illegal." But Mom was beyond logic. Her voice grew, catching the few patrons of the business. "You hear me, you will leave this job right away. You embarrassing our family like this is not what I want, and if this is the road you decide upon, you may forget about sharing our house." Rooted on the ground, I saw her bolt from the store. The automated door swished closed behind her, producing an almost deafening silence. That evening I went home tear-stained cheeks and a heavy heart. Though the house was empty, the quiet felt stifling. I walked to my room and began packing without saying. Mom materialized in the doorway as I was zipping up my last bag. Her face revealed just relief, not the kind of worry I mistakenly hoped for. "So you decided at last to leave," she remarked, her voice empty of feeling. "Good, it's for your best." Dad showed up behind her, nodding in agreement. "Remember to change your surname," he said. "We can't have you disparaging our family name with your choices." Their words cut, but just now I was beyond tears. "Fine," I responded, my voice remarkably steady. "I'll call Grandpa using his name. At least he understood the kind of loving without conditions." Not turning around, I got my luggage and left. I offered my new address. They did not ask for it. I went in with Lisa the following day. Over the preceding few months, we had grown close, and when I told her what occurred, she immediately volunteered her spare room. I came over Sarah's profile one lazy Sunday afternoon as Lisa and I were browsing social media. Though my finger stopped over the unfollow button, curiosity won out. Images of Sarah's earning honors, status updates on her most recent research discoveries, and notifications of her admittance to prestigious scientific societies made up her feed, a procession of successes. Every post drew hundreds of likes and comments, all praising her. "Your sister." Lisa leaned over my shoulder and asked, "Have you lately spoke with her?" I shook my head, thinking back on our most recent contact. Few weeks after I had left my house, I had reached out to Sarah, suggesting we get coffee in a moment of weakness. Her answer came out as chilly and contemptuous. "Anna, we used to have much in common, but now our interests and, more importantly, our degrees of development range somewhat widely. Neither of us would find a productive use for a meeting." That marked our last direct conversation. I kept in touch with my extended relatives, even if my own family was estranged. Especially Aunt Martha grew to be a comfort and a link to my roots. She let loose some facts during one of our many phone talks that both confirmed and undermined my choice to leave. "Oh, she said, her voice weighed down with grief. "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but your folks always inquire whether you will be attending family events. Should our answer be yes, they decline to visit. They claim it's because you're under their current level and they can't stand to be in the same room as you." My chest hurt, a familiar sensation, although it was lessened now. Startled by how much I meant it, "It's okay, Aunt Martha," I said. "Right now, I'm glad with my life. Their loss, if they cannot embrace that, is theirs." And that was accurate as well. Though not ideal, my life was mine. I had a job I liked, friends who embraced me for who I was, and a developing feeling of self-worth unrelated to social level or intellectual ability. 5 years had gone since I left my parents' house, and life had found a comfortable routine. The store had assigned me assistant manager promotion. My friends' network had expanded, and I had even begun enrolling in several business management online courses. Though something seemed lacking, I was happy. That changed one evening in a lovely summer. I found him as my buddies planned a beach bonfire. Standing somewhat apart from the others, he looked somewhat out of place in his button-down shirt and cakas. But it was his eyes that drew me in. As he looked about him, they seemed to glitter with inquiry. I moved across, reaching out a hand. "Hello, I am Anna. You seem like you may enjoy a s'more." He chuckled, a real friendly sound that brought me to grin. "David here, and sure, I would most certainly want a s'more. Years go by since I last had one." We talked as we cooked marshmallows. David turned out to be an environmental scientist just returned from an Amazon study trip. That evening we spoke for hours on everything and nothing. My tales of customer service escapades captivated David, and his environmental enthusiasm captivated me. David and I drew near as the weeks stretched into months. He didn't give a damn about my working as a saleswoman or missing college. He valued my fast thinking, friend-making skills for everyone, and refreshing perspective on life. 6 months into our relationship, I paid his family a dinner party visit. I was nervous. Every one of them was an outstanding scientist, after all. Surprisingly, though, they greeted me with wide arms. They inquired about my profession, hobbies, and aspirations late into the evening. They never once inquired about my family background or degree. That was revitalizing. One year, the day we first met, David suggested, though it was small, just the two of us on the same beach where we had first met. It was ideal. We intended a modest wedding for simply close friends and relatives. I paused over 3 names, Mom, Dad, and Sarah, when I addressed the invites. Notwithstanding all, a part of me still hoped. When the RSVPs returned, those 3 stayed quiet. Living with David exceeded anything I had ever dreamed of and more. We had gotten into a comfortable schedule, juggling my employment at the store with his study. Still, even with my level of contentment, I felt as though I was meant for much greater. That something more arrived at David's parents' house on a slow Sunday afternoon. The discussion shifted to David's most recent studies as we were all lounging in the lawn, savoring the cool lemonade and bright sunshine. "The amount of plastic garbage we are generating is astounding," David said, running a hand through his hair. "The worst aspect is that much of it ends up in landfills or the sea." His dad gave a serious nod. "Although it's a crisis, without a doubt, what can we do? People are not going to give up using plastic overnight." And thought began to grow in my head while they kept debating the issue. Years of working retail had taught me a thing or two about what people want and need. All those hours I would have spent with Mrs. Jenkins, learning to be creative and inventive, suddenly came rushing back. I was already reaching for a pen from the table and a napkin. "What if," I asked, my voice shaking with enthusiasm, "what if we could create something from that plastic garbage, something that people really desire?" Curious, 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. Driven, I kept quickly drawing on the napkin. "Like this," I said, waving my rough sketch. Garden furniture created totally from recycled plastic, robust, environmentally friendly, weather-resistant. We may even make it modular so individuals might personalize their own creations. The quiet that followed was absolutely deafening. I worried for a second that I had overstepped and that they would find my ridiculous concept embarrassing. Then Anna, David's father, whispered gently, eyes wide with wonder, That's brilliant." David seemed to have never seen me before as he fixed me. "Do you find out how many environmental issues this might address? And the market promise is quite great." His mother added, "And it's not just outdoor furniture. Consider all the urban uses, playground equipment, park seating, even building components." What followed was a swirl. Enthusiastic about the idea's possibilities, David's parents volunteered to help bring it to life financially. Before I knew it, we were assembling a company, with me, Anna Holloway, erstwhile Family Disappointment, as the CEO. David took care of creating the technology to effectively recycle and shape the plastic, given his scientific expertise. Using my years of consumer service experience to produce something people would adore, I concentrated on design and marketing. 6 months following that terrible Sunday afternoon, we started our first line of garden chairs. The reply came out as overwhelming. People delighted in the elegant designs, environmentally responsible concept, and narrative underlying them all. Inspired by our success, we broadened our offering. Interested in using our recycled plastic goods for city projects, urban designers began corresponding. And then the call that fundamentally altered everything. The mayor's office requested to see us. We signed a contract committing ourselves to assist in city development. 3 years had gone between that terrible day in David's parents' backyard. Renew, our business, had exceeded our most ambitious expectations. We had changed city parks, recycled tons of plastic garbage, and even begun branching out into environmentally friendly building materials. And now here we were, poised to accept a state award for environmental impact and creativity. I felt proud as David and I stood in the great ballroom surrounded by the crème de la crème of the scientific and economic sectors. We moved throughout the assembly, pausing to speak with different dignitaries and fellow inventors. I spotted them midway through a discussion with the head of urban planning for the city, Sarah, and my dad standing next to the refreshment table. They presented diverse looks. Mom and Dad had aged quite a bit. Their hair seemed more gray than I could recall. And Sarah, typically so put together, was worn out with black circles under her eyes. Our gaze locked across the room for a second. Their features showed disbelief, obviously not expecting to see me in such a context. I looked at David and linked my arm through his. I said, maybe a little louder than required, "Let's go find your parents." My eyes forward, chin raised as we passed my family. David's parents were here, glowing with pride beside the stage. I looked out of the corner of my eye and saw movement while we discussed the approaching event. Approaching with eyes locked on David's mother was my mother. "Excuse me," I said, listening for sickly sweet voice. "Your wonderful family caught my eye. You have to be quite happy of your kid and his partner." I tensed, watching for the drop of the other shoe. Still, my mother-in-law merely grinned kindly. "Oh, we are. Anna is a quite amazing woman. Her being in our family is a gift." I watched them huddled together, feverishly whispering as she returned to my father and Sarah. I overheard brief bits of their talk. "Can't believe it's her. Married into a family of scientists. Probably just here as his plus one." It was at last the moment. I became quite proud when the presenter announced my name and declared, "You renew the State Environmental Innovation Award recipient." My heart thumping with enthusiasm, I strode onto the stage. Chaos broke out as I went for the microphone, poised to deliver the speech I had painstakingly written. My mother shot onto the platform. She had grabbed my arm and taken the microphone from my hand before I could respond. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said with a quivering, emotional voice, "I am the proud mother of this brilliant, worthy woman." She waved broadly in my direction. We always knew Anna would turn out someone quite remarkable. Frozen in wonder, I watched her perform, even managed to shed a few tears. Recognizing the well-known Professor Anderson, the audience started applauding. Years of neglect, disappointment, and rejection crystallizing into a single scorching point of resolve rose up inside me in that instant, rage and hurt. I would let her not take this moment. I pulled the microphone back from her softly but firmly. "Thank you, Mother," I replied, my voice calm in the tempest of feelings within of me. "Please, if I could have a moment of silence." The room went quiet, everyone staring at me. "Yes, I am the daughter of the eminent Professors Anderson," I said, my voice distinctly over the still room. "But I stand before you today not because of them, but against them." My mother's face paling beside me, I watched shock sweep over the audience. I related the years of missed school functions, of being told I was embarrassing, of being ordered to alter my name and move away. Working as a saleswoman, I covered my identity as my own parents embarrassed of me. Dead silence, the room hum on every word. But right now, I stand before you as a success rather than a loser. Not for my family name, but for the family I selected. Seeing tears in David's parents' eyes, I turned to face David. When none else saw promise in me, my husband David and his amazing parents did. They pushed my ideas and encouraged me to visualize. We owe it to them that Renew exists and that we have been able to change our surroundings and neighborhood. I waved for David to take front stage. I watched my father and Sarah slip out of the hall as he was walking up, unable to withstand the public attention. Holding out the trophy, "This honor," I said, "is evidence of what can happen when you believe in someone. When you tend to their potential rather than stifling their energy. It's evidence that brilliance takes many different shapes and that compassion and encouragement can transform lives. Turning to my mother, still shell-shocked next to me, "I'm sorry, but I find your unexpected pride in me unacceptable. Years ago you lost that right." I remarked, hugging David, "My real family is here." People getting to their feet, the hall burst in applause. I heard whispers of respect and encouragement and saw tears. David's parents were proudly beaming, but clearly sobbing. Over the next few days, I heard via the grapevine that Sarah and my parents were under fire in their academic circles. Their behavior of me startled many, and many others were reevaluating their relationships with them. Part of me felt bad for exposing them, for complicating their life as they phrased it. A better part, though, realized I had done nothing illegal. I had just spoken the truth, a truth suppressed for far too long. In terms of me, life continued. Renew kept expanding and inventing. David and I began discussing our own prospective family. Every day I awakened appreciatively for the life I had created, for the family I had selected, and for the power I had discovered within myself.